My name is Jesse Marsh. I've been on the Chesapeake Bay working as a waterman my whole life. My family has been on the water on the Chesapeake Bay for generations. Working on the water ain't easy, you know, you have all kinds of weathers you have to deal with. Rain, cold, wind. I know times oystering where you got icicles forming off the brim of your hat, and really can be hard, but it's very rewarding too. This old timer, he stood up in this meeting and he said he'd been doing this job for 58 years. He said, and he'd only learned 3 things for sure about a crab. They come, they go, and they bite the hell out of them. And that's a crab. That really is a crab.
Jesse Marsh was born and raised on tiny Smith Island, Maryland, in the middle Chesapeake Bay, 70 miles south of Annapolis. It's a world still ruled by the rhythms of nature and rural life. But Jesse's way of life and the entire existence of Smith Island are in danger of vanishing. A short boat ride away from Smith Island lies Hollins Island, Maryland, and a cautionary tale.
Some of my ancestors used to live on Hollins Island, which is about 12 miles north of Smith Island. There was 60 homes about, and it was over 300 people lived on there. And they had stores, they had a recreation center, post office, pretty much everything you needed to run in Holland. Today, there's nothing but marsh and eroded shoreline. And, the water's just swallowed it up, and now it's abandoned. There hasn't been anybody live here since 1922.
The problem is that the world's oceans are rising, getting higher each year, profoundly affecting the Chesapeake Bay and places like Hollins Island.
Due to sea level rise, I'm facing, hopefully not in my lifetime, but who knows, I'm facing all this heritage that I have on these islands, 300 years worth of heritage, and all the evidence of their existence just coming to an end. And the feeling is very sad. It will not be the Eastern Shore that I have known all my life and plan to spend the rest of my life in. I'll just love these islands.
Back on Smith Island, the last inhabited Chesapeake Island in Maryland, a similar fate is unfolding. The rate of sea level rise is accelerating.
Erosion is a big part of why we have lost a good part of our population.
Every day on his boat, Jesse Marsh sees more evidence of change all along the bay. Shores eroding, marshes drowning.
This map on my global positioning system was made about 20 years ago. The satellites give my boat's position right here and right now. As you can see, this shows my boat floating over land. There's no land here anymore, just water. And all this land has disappeared in just 20 years. It's happening that fast.
Why is the sea level rising? The answer lies in part in another striking change Maryland's watermen have been noticing.
It really has got warmer. But when I was a boy, almost every year was severe cold. These islands were blocked in by 14-inch ice. That means all commerce stops. You're blocked in, and you depend on what food you put up, you know, to carry you through those several weeks, you know. We don't have that severe weather in the wintertime. We used to spend so much time out on the ice, you know. Those that could ice skate, I never did learn how to ice skate. My ankles were always too weak. But I used to go slide on the ice. I loved it so well. And walking out across it, my feet would get numb. I'd put them up against the old tin heater, my socks would get a smoke, and my mother say, "You're gonna burn your feet." First thing you know, I would. But I don't have that to worry about these days, you know, and it's a shame because it was fun when we were kids, you know. It really has got warmer.
Nobody pays attention to the weather like the watermen. We see it every day. The weather is definitely warmer.
What the watermen of the Chesapeake are seeing is completely consistent with what scientists worldwide are observing. The planet is warming. The glaciers are melting, the oceans are expanding, and sea level is increasing. This climate change is projected in the near future to lead to adverse effects on human health, agriculture, water resources and the economy. Thankfully, there are solutions to this rapidly emerging crisis in the Chesapeake area. These solutions involve readily achievable changes in the way we run our lives and the way we run our businesses. If we adopt these solutions in the Virginia, Maryland and Washington area, we can save Smith Island and we can save ourselves. There just isn't very much time. We must act now.
"250 miles away from Smith Island, on a mountain ridge in West Virginia, could lie one key to saving Smith Island and the rest of our region from the rising heat."
These modern windmills are quietly and gracefully generating electricity, 44 of them along this ridge, each one of them able to supply the power to over 500 homes. In fact, it's become something of a tourist attraction. They're able to make this abundant power without making any pollution. No sulfur dioxide making acid rain, no nitrogen oxide to make smog for code red days, and most importantly, no carbon dioxide. None. Zero. Zip.
Dr. Robert Watson is former head of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the largest body of scientists ever brought together to study a single issue.
There is no doubt that carbon dioxide is the most important human-induced gas causing global warming. It arises from burning coal, oil and natural gas. If we want to minimize the change in the Earth's climate, we need to dramatically cut the emissions of carbon dioxide as soon as possible.
Carbon dioxide and lesser greenhouse gases, like methane and chlorofluorocarbons, migrate to the atmosphere, creating a warming, smothering blanket that traps the sun's heat. CO2 can remain in the atmosphere over 100 years. As fossil fuel use has skyrocketed over the last century, so has planetary warming, raising the temperature 1 full degree Fahrenheit. Unless dramatic action is taken soon to reduce greenhouse gases, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change projects between 3 and 10 degrees more warming by 2100.
Even very small changes in the Earth's heat budget bring enormous consequences. For example, 15,000 years ago, toward the end of the last ice age, there was, over what is today New York City, a glacier so huge that it measured a mile thick from its base to its top. Amazingly, the planet has only warmed between 5 and 9 degrees Fahrenheit between the climate we have today and one that puts a mile-thick glacier over New York City. Now scientists are saying that the planet could warm up to 10 degrees, not over 15,000 years, but over the next 100 years. That planet, just a few decades away, arriving largely in our lifetime, will look nothing like the world we presently inhabit. Nothing.
Among the many projected impacts from global warming, perhaps none is as alarming as the consequences for human health.
Heat waves are expected to be more frequent, last longer, and be more intense with climate change. People who live in our largest cities, such as this urban Washington, D.C. neighborhood, will suffer some of the greatest risks. Already, heat waves kill more people in America than any other type of natural disaster, including earthquakes, forest fires, even tornadoes and hurricanes. In 1995, for example, Chicago had a heat wave that lasted about a week and killed more than 700 people. And then in the summer of 2003, France had a heat wave that killed more than 15,000 people. The elderly and children are the hardest hit, as well as the urban poor, because they often don't have the money to buy the air conditioners they need, and then they don't have the money to pay the extra electric bills to run them.
Already, the World Health Organization reports that 150,000 people a year are dying due to global warming because extreme weather events, heat waves, droughts, floods, forest fires, have risen sharply. 19 of the 20 warmest years ever recorded have occurred since 1980, with consequences worldwide. The thickness of Arctic sea ice has dropped 40% just since the 1960s. Half the world's coral reefs are dead or dying, in part due to rising sea surface temperatures. And now scientists predict that up to 1/3 of all the planet's animal and plant life, 1/3, could be on the road to extinction by 2050 due to global warming. These emerging changes are already affecting our region. Cherry blossoms in D.C. now bloom several days earlier on average than in the 1970s. Record heat waves and droughts have plagued the region in recent years, affecting our economy and health. Sea level rise is eroding shores everywhere, and the generally strange, unstable weather has affected farming.
When I first started farming 30 years ago, everything went according to script. In recent years, there's no pattern to the weather. The rain either comes too early, too late, too much, too little. The killing frost, way too early, no predictable patterns.
The World Meteorological Organization in July 2003 documented a pattern of sharply erratic weather worldwide in recent years and linked it to global warming. Meanwhile, landmark reports from the Bush administration have further detailed the evidence of global warming while confirming the strong certainty that fossil fuel use is driving most of it. Among other impacts, the Bush administration projects that places like Assateague and Chincoteague Islands may largely disappear due to sea level rise, and that the Colorado River, providing drinking water to Los Angeles, may dry up completely due to diminished snowfall in the Rockies. Yet the Bush administration, dominated by former oil and automaker executives, asserts that switching to clean, renewable energy will disrupt the U.S. economy. Standing virtually alone in the world, the administration rejected the International Kyoto Protocol to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The administration also cites what it calls lingering uncertainty in climate science. As a result, official U.S. policy is to burn substantially more, not less, fossil fuels, and to heavily subsidize this industry with tens of billions of taxpayer dollars. The White House has asked U.S. businesses to voluntarily cut their greenhouse gas emissions, but few companies have come forward.
While there are some scientific uncertainties, what we do know is that the Earth has warmed, precipitation patterns have changed, and sea level has risen. In addition, we project a much warmer world in the future, more floods, more droughts, and these will have overwhelmingly negative impacts on agriculture, human health, water resources, and the displacement of many, many people.
In our region, those impacts continue to accumulate in often startling ways. In 1900, the geographic center of the U.S. maple syrup industry was not New England, but actually Garrett County in western Maryland. Today, that industry has largely disappeared from the mountains of Maryland and Virginia, due in part to warming. Looking ahead, the U.S. EPA now projects that acreage devoted to top agricultural crops could drop up to 44% in Maryland and 30% in Virginia due to shifting and sporadic rain patterns caused by global warming.
All farmers are affected by the unpredictability of weather patterns. For the first time, for instance, I'm thinking of not farming anymore. And in the end, that could hurt all of the consumers, because if enough farmers stop farming, prices are going to go up at the supermarket.
Wildlife is also being affected right now across the region. The Blackwater Wildlife Refuge on Maryland's eastern shore lost a staggering 1/3 of its marsh in the 20th century, largely to sea level rise.
Many of the marshes in Chesapeake Bay simply can't keep up with sea level rise. You can see right in front of us that we have marshes that are very low in stature. The reason for that low stature is that the root zone is filled with metabolites which are actually poisonous, like hydrogen sulfide. As hydrogen sulfide builds up to toxic levels, we have less and less ability of the plants to pump oxygen into the root zone. As the root zone is really effectively deoxygenated, the plants then have less and less productivity, and they're unable to keep up with sea level rise, and they essentially just drown. We've had huge impacts on marshes over the last century with 1 foot of sea level rise. Projections are now for about up to 3 feet of sea level rise over the next century. Imagine what 3 feet might do here. Most of this marsh would be inundated. And these marshes, of course, are critical habitat for millions of migratory waterfowl, muskrats, fish, and also crabs.
Area scientists say the surge tide and flooding from Hurricane Isabel was made worse by global warming-induced sea level rise. Major population centers will be in harm's way. Businesses and homeowners are already feeling the effect.
Historically, in Old Town along our waterfront, we're accustomed to flooding in normal conditions. The impact from global warming, which increases water levels and rising temperatures, will certainly cause severe impacts to us in terms of the city's economy, property damage, and additional flooding. And I'm severely concerned about this.
Area health officials continue to warn about the many projected impacts on health.
In our region, human health is at severe risk from climate change in many ways. Aside from the heat waves, asthma and breathing problems are also expected to get worse with climate change. Another risk is the spread of infectious diseases, especially those carried by insects like malaria or West Nile virus. We know that insects develop faster in warmer temperatures and are much better able to spread diseases in warmer temperatures. And in addition to the warmer temperatures, things like floods and droughts also make it easier for insects to spread disease.
Tourism, a major industry in the region, could also suffer. Some studies project future flooding even across the mall in Washington, D.C., and Ocean City, Maryland's landmarks, beaches, boardwalks, hotels, and amusement parks could literally be washed away.
It's mid-high tide at Ocean City, and you can see on that bulkhead over there that if we added another 3 feet worth of sea level rise, we virtually have the sea at the level of the bottom of the building. With the increased storminess that scientists expect under future global warming, on top of the 3 feet of sea level rise we expect, it could make these buildings virtually uninhabitable.
Thinking about the impacts on our region from unchecked global climate change is a pretty sobering experience. But the good news is, solutions to this problem are abundant here in our region, all around us. The world's leading climate scientists agree that there's still time to slow down the warming and perhaps eventually stop it. What's required is a dramatic reduction in our use of oil, coal, and natural gas, as much as 80% worldwide over the next few decades. Fortunately, the technologies to achieve this switch are already here. By tapping the abundant resources in our own region of wind, solar, biomass, money-saving energy efficiency and conservation measures, we can achieve this goal.
No longer mere relics of the Dutch landscape, windmills, ultra-modern wind farms are popping up along the East Coast in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New York, and Vermont. Indeed, wind power is the fastest-growing energy source in the world today.
The U.S. Department of Energy estimates that Virginia and Maryland could generate 10 to 20% of their current electricity load from land-based wind turbines, which would only take up a small fraction of our land. And we could get even more if we put turbines offshore, as the Europeans are doing.
I'll talk about Garrett County's perspective on the Clipper Wind Power Project. There's a lot of economic benefits. For example, there's the one-time construction jobs. There's probably between 150 and 200 construction jobs, construction period of somewhere between 6 and 12 months. There's the follow-on permanent jobs for a small group of somewhere between 6 and 8 most likely, technicians, maintenance people, well-paid positions, pretty high-tech skills. Each wind farm, each turbine is going to pay about $20,000 a year in property tax. So depending on the size of the project, Garrett County could realize somewhere between $1 million and $1.4 million in just real estate taxes. Then there's the benefit to the individual landowners. Each farmer gets somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 per site. And then there's the tourism aspect of this too. We think that it's going to be a good place for tourists that are already coming to the county, give them something else to do to come look at it, promote green power, environmental responsibility, and that sort of thing.
Well, one of the many benefits of clean, renewable energy is that it helps reduce our dependence on oil imports, improving national security, improving the economy. More importantly, the investments made in renewables such as solar and wind tend to produce far more jobs per dollar invested. Moreover, those funds are invested in domestic industries, domestic jobs. They are not exported, so it improves the economy of the local community.
Maryland would be a great location for wind energy. Each of these towers produces 1.5 megawatts potentially of energy, of electricity. If we built 100 to 200 of these towers, that would be a significant contribution to Maryland's energy needs.
The price of wind-powered electricity is also increasingly cost competitive, just slightly more than natural gas-fired electricity. Indeed, if you factor in the enormous cost of unchecked climate change, wind power may well be the cheapest energy source in the world today. But can windmills coexist safely with our region's bird populations?
In the 4 Appalachian states of Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia, the mountaintop mining extraction is projected to take out 380,000 acres of deciduous, mature forest off the tops of mountains and fill valleys and fill streams with that. And it's projected that this will knock out close to 20% of the cerulean warbler population in the United States, a bird for which there's a listing petition under the Endangered Species Act pending. What we're about is minimizing that impact or preventing it through properly siting wind turbines and operating these in a fashion where you're not affecting birds either through direct mortality or through habitat loss or destruction. And that can be done and has been done. There are wind turbine farms that operate with virtually no avian mortality.
Carefully conducted national studies show that even if America got half of its electricity from wind farms, bird fatalities would actually be less than 1% of what U.S. house cats cause each year. Global warming, meanwhile, could soon be the ultimate bird killer, devastating habitats worldwide. The point seems clear. For a great number of endangered and threatened bird species, clean energy wind farms may be their best chance for survival.
What about the visual impacts of wind farms on human communities and historic sites like Civil War battlefields?
The Public Service Commission must consider the impacts of facilities on things like aesthetics and historic sites in the vicinity of the proposed facility. And that would include, of course, wind power facilities.
And there would be nothing constructed, no commercial wind farm constructed without many opportunities, many forums for the public to weigh in for or against such a development.
Most future wind farms will be well offshore or in rural and semi-rural areas, where, as an added plus, more and more farmers and other landowners will benefit enormously. Other forms of renewable energy also promise to be engines of economic growth, including solar power.
I've been in the solar energy industry for more than 10 years, and today business is better than ever. I think buyers are motivated by rising energy costs, increasing power outages, and also environmental concerns such as global warming. Solar panels are reliable, they don't cause any pollution, and you can put them just about anywhere the sun shines. Now, the electricity from solar does cost more than power produced from wind turbines, but the price is coming down. So that, coupled with state incentive programs like tax credits and even grants, are helping to pay for the cost of solar. So clearly, solar has a big future here in this region.
Already, solar power systems are growing in number in other area schools, homes, and businesses. Even the Pentagon recently installed a 75-kilowatt peak solar hot water system on its roof. Another major potential renewable energy source is sustainably raised agricultural products, also called biomass. A co-op of families in the D.C. area heat their homes with organically fertilized Maryland-raised corn, using modern and convenient corn-burning stoves. The stoves reduce CO2 emissions over natural gas an astonishing 85%.
This silo behind me is a 21-ton urban granary, the first one in the world. It's here to allow families to conveniently come and get corn to burn in their homes, actually saving them money. The great thing about this urban granary is that not only do we have the stove manufacturer selling more stoves, creating jobs, the farm here locally in Maryland is selling more corn, organically grown corn, and the families are able to actually save money over natural gas by burning this corn in their homes. And everybody wins. The farmers win, the stove manufacturers win, and the families win, and we also have reduction in global warming.
Other regional farm products like switchgrass and soybeans also show promise as sources of clean energy. But experts say stabilizing our climate will also require greatly improving energy conservation and the efficiency of our appliances, cars, and manufacturing equipment.
Americans use 5 times as much energy per capita as the rest of the world. Even when you compare the United States to Britain or Germany or France, we still use twice as much energy per capita, and we have basically the same standard of living. Can Americans reduce their energy use to the level that Europeans now consume? Well, sure. All it takes is a commitment to energy efficiency, particularly in transportation, in buildings, in our utilities, and we know what to do, we just need the political will to do it.
According to the Union of Concerned Scientists, the number one thing Americans can do to protect the climate is drive more fuel-efficient vehicles.
I drive a Toyota Prius. It's a hybrid car, which means it has a gasoline engine and an electric motor, which never needs to be plugged in. It's a powerful car, it's very quiet, and it's reasonably comfortable. And I get upwards of 49 miles to the gallon using regular gasoline.
Efficient appliances are also huge savers.
The refrigerator is typically the greatest energy user in any home. Our fridge pretty much looks like any other fridge because it is like any other fridge, and it's working hard. In the freezer, it's making ice and storing a full supply of food. But this fridge actually uses the electricity equivalent of a regular 50-watt incandescent light bulb. That's it. You might be thinking that since this refrigerator is so energy efficient, it must have cost us thousands of dollars, but it didn't. Actually, we spent $150 more than a regular fridge. We went to Sears and got a Kenmore energy efficient fridge. So we saved $100 per year in electricity usage, and we got our money back in 18 months.
The goal is actually quite simple. The United States can dramatically reduce its energy use by 75% or more through investments in energy efficiency in cars, appliances, homes, businesses. The energy that remains, the other 20-25%, most of which can be met by investments in solar, wind, biofuels, geothermal, and hydropower. It's the combination of renewables and energy efficiency that can enable us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80%, which is necessary to save our planet.
There's still another big piece of the climate solution: improved land use.
I'm standing here along Route 7 in Tysons Corner, Virginia. This classic example of sprawl development has produced an ever-expanding concrete landscape, intensifying that classic heat island effect. As sprawl development jumps past places like Tysons, it's clearing our forests and our farmlands that absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, sequestering it, and thus protecting our climate. Sprawl development is forcing us to burn millions of gallons of additional gasoline, which is accelerating climate change. This could all be avoided if people had better options to take transit and even safely walk. I'm now in the Clarendon neighborhood of Arlington, Virginia. This leafy, walkable, bikeable neighborhood is just a few blocks from a metro subway station and the many nearby shops, offices, and restaurants. Due to this convenience, 70% of the households in this neighborhood have only one car or no cars. This kind of smart growth development creates convenient and lovely communities that require much less land per capita. A neighborhood like this directly protects our children from future climate chaos.
With little action coming from Washington, many states have seized the initiative in passing clean energy and efficiency laws. One of the most effective steps a state can take is adopting a renewable portfolio standard, which mandates that a certain percentage of electricity sold in a state come from clean sources.
14 states already have such laws, mandating as much as 20% clean electricity. These laws help to dramatically increase the market for clean energy while simultaneously lowering its overall cost. In Maryland, the Democratic General Assembly has passed and the Republican governor has signed a clean energy standard. It requires 7.5% of the state's electricity to come from renewable resources. It's a start, but only a start. DC and Virginia, meanwhile, have no such standards. That's why their legislators are hearing from a growing coalition of environmentalists, health, labor, faith, and other leaders who are making clean, renewable energy a top legislative priority.
States can also set improved efficiency standards for certain energy-intensive products like ceiling fans, cable boxes, and commercial freezers, and offer tax incentives for their purchase. Additionally, Maryland, D.C., and Virginia could follow the lead of California, New York, Connecticut, and other states in setting firm targets for the sale of low-emission vehicles like hybrid and electric cars within their states. And states can provide incentives for smart growth development, which curbs sprawl and protects our farms and forests.
What do we want? Clean energy! What do we want? Clean energy! What do we want? Clean energy!
Good laws only get passed when informed citizens like you become involved. Support organizations fighting global warming in your area. Help educate elected officials so they'll champion clean energy and efficiency laws. Make climate-friendly consumer choices in your own life by buying energy-efficient light bulbs, cars, appliances, and by voluntarily signing up for wind power. Imagine for one moment a complete end to code red smog days in our cities. Imagine the total disappearance of acid rain, a huge plummet in childhood asthma, the end of mountaintop mining in Appalachia, and a huge drop in nitrogen flows into the Chesapeake Bay. Imagine all of this and an end to global warming simply by making the switch to clean energy. But given the great momentum built into our fossil fuel economy, it's going to take nothing short of a social and political revolution to make the switch in time. And all past social revolutions in this country, from women's suffrage to civil rights, have happened only as a result of committed, broad-based grassroots movement. The same is true now. The grassroots clean energy movement in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia needs you. It needs me. It needs all of us right now.
It's a fact. We are all Smith Islanders now. Like the residents of this fragile and shrinking fishing community, we increasingly feel the consequences of global warming all around us. But we have nowhere to go, no mainland to move to, no safe shore for our retreat. We have but one Earth, our planetary island in the vast sea of black space.
Our way of life here on Smith Island and across the whole Chesapeake Bay region is really at risk. By all of us working together, we can save it.
Our children and all future generations will remember well those of us alive at the turn of the 21st century, when it first became absolutely clear that the planet's temperature was spiking. They will remember us because either we did nothing to stop the heat, thus plunging all future generations into ecological, social, and agricultural chaos, or because we did the right thing and urgently, rapidly switched to clean energy produced right here in our region, and so did our part to help stop global warming, saving Smith Island and saving ourselves.